sports are really important vehicles for relationships.
We have purpose. We have a why. We bring people together. We connect.
I feel like God is our greatest supporter and our greatest coach.
Welcome to Rabbi On The Sidelines. This is Rabbi Sherman from Sinai Temple in Los Angeles. Often we speak about the intersection of sports and faith. We speak about the physical body and what it means to perform at an excellent level on the field and off. But today we're going to focus not just on the physical, but also on the mental, on the spiritual, on the emotional. And so this week we are joined by sports psychologist, Dr. Rick Aberman. For over 20 years with the Minnesota Vikings and the Minnesota Twins. He has lots of experience in the college sports world, allowing people to get their peak performance, figuring out what is not necessarily wrong, but the kinks in the hose in order to make sure that they achieve excellence. From Minneapolis, Minnesota, or Dr. Rick Aberman. Rick, it's so great to have you on Rabbi on the Sidelines.
Oh, it's so fun for me to be here. Pleasure to be here.
So I have so many questions just offline. We were talking about how you've worked with so many different sports, so many different players and coaches over your different decades. But in this show, we separate between the ordinary and the sacred. But really, by the end of the show, we actually put that together. And the last question is there faith in sports? So I want you to have that in mind when we get to the end. But let's first talk about the ordinary, your journey into the sports world. I know you were a runner growing up and always loved sports. And how did this let's talk about the love of sports first before we talk about the love of psychology.
Yeah, my love of sports. Well, I grew up in sports. My parents were very much into sports, not athletic, but they were sports fans. And grew up enjoying baseball, and I wasn't the greatest athlete. I played sports, and it wasn't until later when I got into running that I really appreciated and was able to find a little bit more of my talent. And I knew from a very early age that I wanted to be a psychologist. And I thought if I could learn more about myself and earn a living doing that, that's pretty good. And I would take that. And being around other athletes, I've always been comfortable in sports. I knew that you often have really talented people, but maybe they aren't so in touch with their internal worlds, or they don't quite understand them. Maybe they're not so introspective. And they may be achieving a lot of things. And I thought that's an area where I could serve them in a way that could really help them reach their full potential. So that's kind of how I got into it.
And the psychology of sports, you were quoted, I watched a beautiful YouTube of you from a couple months ago. It says, "I never separate the person from their performance." What does that mean?
Yeah, well, I think everything is so segmented and siloed in our world today. And, in sports, we focus a lot on the physical side and the skills and the techniques, and all those things are really important. But they are not necessarily the only thing that determines how far somebody's going to go or one's potential. So we talk about things like emotional intelligence. We talk about how well people manage their own emotions and their internal conflicts and the stresses of being at high levels. And so I believe if you think of like professional sports, we spend millions and millions of dollars on player development, and very, very little, it's starting to change a little bit, on people development. And so my job has always been, if you develop the person and you have the talent, that's how you have a chance to be at your best, because you want to bring your whole self to whatever it is you do. You want to bring your whole self to what you do as a rabbi, as whatever your profession, and certainly in the performance area. If we want to be able to sustain that, that's what we need to do.
And so sports is interesting because often a marker of success is a failing grade in any other thing. Free throw shooting, let's put that aside. But field goal percentage at 30 to 50%, batting average at 250 to maybe 300, completion percentage for a quarterback. So how do you define excellence based on failing grades in the sports psychology world?
Yeah, well, I think for me, it comes down to being able to differentiate what you do from who you are as a person. Mm-hmm. And so what I mean by that is, I may be really good at what I do, but that doesn't really say anything about who I am as a person and how I'm able to deal with the world, and from a relational standpoint, interact with the world and the community and teammates and things like that. So I think, in sports, or you take a sport like baseball, it's just so inherent with failure, and learning how to deal with that in a way that doesn't define you, I think, is really the key. Because if it does define you, I mean, I tell young players just coming into professional baseball, I'm pretty sure you're going to make an error. I'm pretty sure you're going to strike out. I'm pretty sure and fairly certain you're going to lose a game once in a while. And so learning how to deal with that and understand how to do it in a way where it doesn't define you is really where we want to focus our work.
And so is there an example of a player or a situation, let's take the Twins, for instance, that you had for 20 years, that you saw somebody who was heading towards failure, but based on the techniques or strategies that you gave them, allowed them to achieve success in the way that they didn't think they could?
Yes. We had a pitcher who was very good, came out as a top signing player with a top pick for the organization. He was a great college player and went through the minors, did very well, finally makes it to the big leagues, lots of expectations, big kid. And he was good, and then his performance tailed off a little bit. And they're trying, most times what people do is they make the mechanical issues, they look at the video, they do all these kinds of things. But my job with anybody really is to help people see how they might get in their own way.
Interesting. How
Now,
people can get in their own way.
Their own way.
Yeah.
Right. So I need somebody to help me see how I get in my way, because we all do. You, same thing, and you help people see how they might get in their way. Now, here's the reality with that simple statement. My job is to help people see how they get in their own way. The reality is not everybody wants to know.
Yes.
And that becomes our biggest challenge. If we can help people change that narrative to see that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness, now we have a chance. And so this particular pitcher eventually gets sent down to the minor leagues. And I would travel around to the minor leagues, and I'm in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, visiting our AAA team.
Yeah.
Yes, visiting our AAA team, and they're playing the Red Sox AAA team. And there's our pitcher, and so he sees me on the bench and comes back in between innings, and he goes, "Oh, Rick, it's great to see you." I said, "Yeah." I go, "How are you doing?" And he goes, "I'm doing great. I'm doing great." And so I looked at him, I said, "So why are you here if you're doing so great?" And then he kind of backed off a little bit and laughed a little bit. But his issue was he was such a perfectionist. He was so determined to have success and get back to the big leagues, which of course he probably at some point knew he would, but there was also the chance he may not. And so every pitch, it had to be a certain location, it had to be a certain result. And if it wasn't, he would, I don't want to say throw a temper tantrum on the mound, but he would wear it. You could tell by his body language, and pitching coach would go out there and try and pep him up, talk him up and be positive. And it just kept happening over and over. And finally, afterwards, I said, "Look, you look like when this isn't working, like something really bad has happened to you." And I said, "You're letting this determine how you feel about yourself. This is what you do. This is not who you are as a person." And I said, there's a big difference between needing to do something and wanting to do something.
I love that. Yep.
Because that wanting is a choice. It means I'll be disappointed if I don't get it, but I'm willing to take the risks necessary to try and get it. And if I don't, I'll still be okay. If I need it, first of all, there's very few things we need in life. But if I don't get it, I'm in real trouble. And often when things don't go our way or we're confronted with failure or adversity, we act as if we're not okay. And so trying to develop what I call that inner confidence, not the external confidence based on results, but that internal confidence, knowing who you are and how you want to be no matter what's going on around you. That's what I call mental toughness. And that's what we try and work on. And he spoke very publicly about our visit and what turned his career around to the press. And he was very open about it. And I don't talk about my players or my clients. If they want to talk about it, that's fine. Or I need their permission. And so that was one example.
And so let's talk about the difference between players and coaches and their needs and wants, because I think that's really interesting. I'll go to the theology point for a moment. My last year of rabbinical school, our professor, Dr. Neil Gilman of blessed memory, he asked us to do a theology paper about how we see God. And the musicians wrote songs and the poets write poems. And I love sports. And so I said, God is a coach, because who gets the credit for the good stuff? The wins? It's the coach. But as we saw with John Harbaugh just a couple days ago with the Baltimore Ravens, who gets not the credit or who gets kicked out first? It's the coach. And I saw that as sort of the God piece. And when people come to faith, it's usually often when things are in trouble, not when things are great. And they actually thank God for this. So what do you see the difference in the psychological needs between coaches and players at that highest level?
Yeah, it's really interesting because the biggest difference is that coaches don't play.
Right.
So we can plan, we can guide, we can coach, we can counsel, we can teach, we can do all those things. But once the game starts, we're not on the field, they are. And so one of the things that this triggers, and this is about leadership, essentially, is that you can't want it more than they do. And if it becomes about your need, now you're not really there for their best interests, but you're there for your best interests. And players pick up on that, and people pick up on that. And it weakens your potency, because what players want to know that you're there to support them and to help them be at their best. Just like our parents are there to help our children be at their best. But if the parent makes it about them, then the dynamics get kind of a little bit more dysfunctional. That becomes something different. And we see this in leadership. So the difference between players and coaches, that's a significant one. Helping coaches understand there's a certain amount that they just are not able to do. And if they were a player or an athlete, that's very difficult, because they're used to fixing things and doing things about it. And sometimes coming to terms with your own helplessness is really, really a challenge. And so the other thing that from the psychological side of things, I guess, from my end, we have come a long ways over the years dealing with mental health in sports. And even now we can talk about it. I see, teams will have batting practice shirts that say mental health, or, we'll have mental health sponsors, or we'll have a mental health, those kinds of things to talk about, which is really, it's great. It's not therapy, but it's great. And so we talk about it. So we've done a pretty good job of talking to players, making it a little less demystifying, I guess, making it more user-friendly. That said, when it comes to sports executives or leadership or coaches, we don't do anything for those guys.
Interesting.
We don't have any set ways of making it things available, those kinds of resources available to them. Now, people may find it on their own, or there may be, we need a crisis for something to happen in order for something, it's like John Harbaugh gets, this is not really about John Harbaugh, but many coaches get fired, or they lose their job, or they make mistakes. And that is an opportunity to look inside oneself.
Right.
My job is to help them be a little more proactive, so we don't have to have that crisis. And so we want to normalize mental health, if you will, so that we can ask for help before you're ready to jump off a bridge.
Oh, I like that.
And that is the key of what I do.
And so your book, Why Good Coaches Quit, it seems like it fits into that category as well. That you have, people at the top of their game and they're just like, is it because it's not for them? Is it because what you said earlier that they're used to fixing things and they can't because they're not playing? Why do good coaches quit?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest reasons why good coaches quit, and we wrote that book some time ago, but it's very pertinent today, is it's why good coaches quit, but it's about all the other stuff.
Mhm.
It's about all the other things that a coach has to do. You ask a coach, what's your favorite time of day? And they say 2:30, because that's when I get to practice.
Hmm.
The rest of the day, I'm dealing with schedules, I'm dealing with sponsors, I'm dealing with owners, I'm dealing with media, I'm dealing with travel, I'm dealing with all these kinds of things and all the different roles that a sports coach has to function as, whether it depending on your budget and supports, your academic counselor, your travel agent, you're a banker, you're an agent now, you're dealing with agents, your labor negotiator. There's all kinds of things that are happening. And then because of all that, sometimes people get very distant from the very reason that brought them into the profession in the first place.
Right.
So it's like, why did you get into this? Well, because I like to teach and I like to see people grow and develop and reach their potential. Great. Let's get back to that, because often the more success we have, the busier we are, and the more external variables there are, we get distant from it. And then we end up saying, this isn't for me anymore. It's not worth it. And in today's world, especially in the college, people like Jim Boeheim and his generation and these wonderful coaches that have so much knowledge, who wants to do half this stuff anymore? My wife played soccer, Division I soccer. She was a great soccer player. She ended up coaching college soccer for all over the place for 20 years. She would never want to coach today.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, the things she misses, but, she works with me now with the work that we do with the tennis teams and other, which is great. But it's a challenge of coaching. And quite honestly, in some places, it's just not all that safe to coach anymore.
Can you expand on that? When you say safe, you mean physical safety, or
maybe in some cases
just
physical
in terms
safety,
of the emotional aspect of what they're dealing with?
Yes, and the money is so great right now, and so from a liability standpoint, how many coaches they don't pay you enough money to take the risk to be out there and be open to all these kinds of challenges and things where you want to help people, but maybe you shouldn't because it's not really your expertise. And then, kids are coming into school as their own brand and their own corporations today, and it's a different gig. And
I was going to actually ask you about the NIL piece in psychology, where when I grew up, let's just talk Coach Boeheim because he's right behind me here. He was one of my heroes in the sports world, one of our first guests. But when I grew up, he basically was like, no NIL, right? You come here, you get a free education, you learn from the best, and if you don't like it here and you want to transfer, you sit out a year. There's loyalty to a program. It's not the instant gratification. How has the sports psychology field maybe changed based on NIL when I'm like, wait, who is this guy? Oh, he's played for 5 schools in 5 years because X, Y, and Z. And eventually it seems like the grass isn't greener on the other side.
Yeah, often it isn't. And now it's not just about playing time. It's not just about result. It's about money. If you go to school to be able to get an education so you can get a good job and earn a living, well, there's, you could play 1 year and do very well, make more money than you'd ever would in any kind of job that you might come across. And so it's really different. And the whole NIL and the change is like, first of all, it's happening so fast. It's one of those things where we're living history right now. And I actually think it's kind of cool. Now, college athletics have always gone through various stages of this, going way back into the beginning of the 1900s. I was reading these, there was a Carnegie study in 1920 talking about the corruption of college sports, that
Mm-hmm.
some players were given cardigan sweaters and were allowed to ride in Pullman cars as extra benefits. And this was something that not everybody was taking advantage, not everybody was able to do. And so, it was just different iterations. And I think it's changing. And I'm not here to say it's good or bad. I think it's
Different.
It's just different. And we have to learn how to deal with it. And it may mean deciding, this isn't for me anymore. Now, I think younger people coming into it, this is what they know. This is their reality, just like I came into it at a certain point in time, or you came into it. It's different struggles, different challenges. And so it's about a fit. And it's changing. The game is basically the same, and that's cool. But it's turning into something different. And is that right or wrong? In some ways, I think with what's going on now, there's a lot of, from my end, there's a lot of relief with that, because there's some sanity in it, at least. Even though it seems insane, there's some sanity, because we know how much a quarterback costs now.
Right.
Now, in the 80s, we knew how much a running back cost. But it was all under the table.
Interesting. Yep.
And so, I always said back then, the one of my biggest problems with college sports was that it occurs on a college campus. It's, you have two conflicting systems about participation, good experience for the student athletes and all this and that. But then there's the business of college sports that was growing and growing and growing, and some people figured it out and some haven't. And I went through that transition at Wisconsin, and that was part of my job, was to help the athletic department and the athletes and the staff to move through sort of the professionalization of college sports back then. And in fact, there's an interesting book that then senior writer Rick Tellender from Sports Illustrated wrote about that transformation of college athletics, which is still very true today. And I didn't write the book, but I was a main character in the book.
Oh, wow.
And Rick took a leave of absence from Sports Illustrated and followed me around for a year. He said,
oh my gosh.
It was very, very cool.
What's the book called?
It's called From Red Ink to Roses.
From Red Ink to Roses, everybody. Let's grab that one after we get the Why Good Coaches Quit. Yeah,
it was, I didn't write it, and I didn't know how it would turn out, but it was, I saw Rick recently, and he still lives in Chicago, and still just recently retired from Chicago Sun-Times. And he says, there still hasn't been anything like that, where a journalist has been allowed that kind of access and to watch and to tell the story of the people and the relationships of what that journey is all about, and the challenges and how they deal with it. So, it's kind of cool. I think we can build off that.
And so you talked about the people. Part of the people in the sports world are actually the fans. I think we really realized that during COVID, when a lot of these people were playing in bubbles, when UCLA was in the Final Four in Indianapolis, and the NBA bubble in Florida. What's that sort of relationship psychologically between fans and, when they see home field advantage, what does that mean psychologically? Is it real?
Yeah, it's something. It's not so much, for me, it's not so much real, it's whether it's sustainable or not. Because you can find that it can really work for you for the first few minutes of the game until something happens, and then maybe it doesn't work anymore. We don't always win when we're at home. We don't always lose when we're on the road. It's statistically, I don't know what it is, but my guess is it's not any real surprise. It's probably fairly easy. I've never liked the home field advantage, because I always thought, so we're playing on the road. Now we have to try harder because we're on the road. Why do we need something to happen in order for us to be at our best? Why aren't we that way at home and on the road? Why can't we do that? Don't let the external environment determine how you want to be. And for that matter, let's not worry about the other team. Yes, we should be prepared for tendency and things like that. but let us dictate how we want to be and who we are and communicate that. Let them become reactive towards us. And so I think things like home field advantage and things like that, it's fun to have a home crowd and cheering. On the other hand, once you're in the game, you're playing the game.
Right.
And that's just what it is. For many years, college football at Minnesota, we have a small stadium, 50,000 people roughly, and they rarely sell it out. The teams haven't been good. They used to be, but they basically haven't won since the 60s. So a long time. And so their team, I was working with the what we call the specialists, the kickers, the punters. Yep. They were playing at Michigan. Well, there were 107,000 people there, and we get about 25, 30, maybe 40,000 on a good day. And, these are pressure points people that we're dealing with. And so you think, well, they're going into a difficult environment and all this and that. And of course, then out of well-intentions, but not really what we want, coaches talk about, well, you're going to be playing in front of a big audience and all this. It's going to be tough. And it's like, I don't like that kind of talk. They have the countdown clock until we play at Michigan or the big game. Forget about the clock. Do your thing. You kick the ball. This is how you kick it. Stay internal, not externally oriented. And so when you do that, you might actually have a decent chance. And if you're good at what you do, and if there's any weather or things that are beyond it, that affects both teams. So just do your thing. And if you're prepared and you're good enough, it will come out more in your favor more often than not.
And then obviously when you started in this field, there was no social media. But what about that external force of the psychological piece? I remember Coach Mike Hopkins, who was at Syracuse for so long, then Washington, now in the NBA. Yeah. They used to hang articles in the locker room. Now nobody reads articles, hard copy, but they're TikToks and Instagrams. Some people say, they shut off the social media. I understand that's a different external piece, but it's got to get into the minds of athletes for sure.
No question. So we can't ignore all these things. And I'm not one of these people that say, well, take away the phones, don't look at social media, don't watch TV. It's like, we don't live in a bubble.
We live in the world, right?
Our job is to figure out how to live in the world. Your world happens to include football or baseball or whatever it is. And you live in that world. And that's not all you do. You're a student on campus. You have families. You have whatever you are. And so we accept those things, but we don't want to be defined by those. Now, that's a lot easier said than done. And again, the more success we have, the more people notice. And the more people notice, the more expectations we may feel.
Right.
From coaching. So in a sense, that's a good problem, right? Like a way to deal with that is to maybe not be so successful, and then nobody cares, nobody pays attention. But that sort of defeats, not many people want that. Although some people, I find, quite honestly, subconsciously do prefer that. Right. There's a conflict that if I was as successful, and I can give you many examples there, as successful as I know I could be, I might have to change as a person. I might have more What if I can't repeat this good season? We see these in sophomore slumps or, after good year, free agent years, and then they sign and it's like, oh, they're not quite as good anymore. The expectations. So all those things come into play. So we want to understand those things. And I think now with NIL, and like I say, the money is so big, people generally do want to live up to what they're being paid to do. And so they feel that pressure like they felt with a full scholarship, but it's just amped up and on steroids now. And I think what happens is it tends to isolate people and make them feel more alone, and sometimes to retreat out of protection from all the things that are going on around them. And the other thing it does is it tends to lead to it impacts our decision making, and that can be problematic because when we look at high performance, really in any area, it's always about the same thing. And that's about making good decisions under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we do that? We have to teach people how to deal with their emotions, and often they're conflicting emotions. I'm excited because I have an opportunity to win the game, and I'm scared to death that if I miss this kick,
Right.
our season's done.
Uh-huh.
And there's many millions of people watching me do this.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I
that's
mean, you can say Bill Buckner right now, and it still rings
exactly
a
right.
bell. You can say Keith Smart to me in Indiana, and it's 1987, and it kills me, and I was 5 years old. You can, on, and the one moment, from the GOAT to the worst.
Very quickly. And that is a lot of pressure. But if we don't help people to be comfortable with their interior, with their internal worlds, they don't know how to access it and use it to their advantage versus it inhibiting them or coming out in ways that aren't helpful.
Right.
And this is Rabbi, this is very, again, I'm telling you, but it's countercultural.
Mm-hmm.
We're not used to doing that. We want the trick. We want the tool. We want the focus on the technique. Show me something. How do I do it? And let me fix it. When we're dealing with people, and we don't do a very good job of teaching people how to be more comfortable with their internal worlds.
Mm-hmm.
We teach them how to function at high levels and to accomplish a lot of wonderful things in the world, but how to be, that's a whole untapped area.
And so,
and one that, quite honestly, most of sports psychology doesn't really address.
I think it's called Yom Kippur, actually. Everything you're saying,
well, it's your business.
Everything you're saying could exactly be put into our prayer book liturgy on the high holidays. And, it's not I'm sorry, but it's how to, I like what you said in the beginning, it's how to get out of your own way in
Yes.
order, because it's not just, okay, I'm sorry I did that, but like, why did I do that? What made me do that? And what caused me to, and actually I'll just go rabbinic for a moment and I'll go back to coach.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Maimonides says, when you're talking about, when to say you're sorry, basically it says, if you're in the same position again and you make the same mistake, then you haven't done the work in order to fix it.
That's right.
Yeah. And it takes a while.
You and I are in the same business. That's why I was excited to be on your show. I need all the support I can get.
Actually, one of my dreams out there is to be a chaplain for one of these teams one day. So if the Vikings, Twins, ever you need me, I'm here. My friends who are pastors often get that opportunity. I haven't seen many rabbinic positions yet, but I'm excited to pursue that if that comes around.
I will keep that in mind. I know a lot of people.
About the fans and the separation between identity and self, I think that's very interesting. I had the opportunity to take my kids to a Laker game the other night, but like, I don't know what's happening in JJ Redick's home or LeBron James' home or, Jackson Hayes' home. I'm just coming there to make sure that they give me a great show.
Yeah.
But did they get, was it a good day or a bad day for them? And so how does that work in psychology in terms of having to put that aside for them, perform for themselves, but also to perform for others, and then be under the microscope that way?
Yeah. Again, it's a challenge. I will have, as you're talking, I'm thinking of a couple people that have said this to me over the years. My best part of my week is the 3 hours I'm on the field.
Uh-huh.
Because then, or on the ice, or on the course, or on the whatever, because then I can get away from all the things that I have to deal with in my life. Mm-hmm. So they see it as a refuge. And that's, for some people, their lives are full of turmoil and conflict and complex, and just see the performance as an opportunity to be themselves, their true self. Well, that's great, but we have the rest of our lives, so we only play for that short time. All these people come home and they sleep and they have lives and families. I believe in order for people to be at their best, you want to help them in all aspects of their life, so that if they have their life together on the court or off the court, and if we can bring those two things together, the whole person, now, like I say, now we have a chance to really be at our best, number one. the transition is, you know, these people are in the entertainment business,
Right.
performers, whether you're in a symphony, whether you're you know, a high level musician, and that's great that you do that. But for that 90 minutes, you're a performer, you're entertaining. It's not just about you and your craft. Now, that's a piece of it, but it's allowing people to be an observer of what it is you do and to share that with others. And I think oftentimes if we can, and you'll hear athletes talk about a connection with the fans. Fans aren't always distractions. Sometimes they're a connection. And if you think about what you do if you're a performer, as an artist, you have the opportunity to create and involve the audience, involve the people that are observing and watching. And being part of something bigger than yourself is a wonderful opportunity versus something that I got to work hard to separate my life into, you know, protect myself from all that. So I believe our lives are relational. We're people, we're relational, and learning how to do that at very high levels, that's fun.
Yeah, I mean, during COVID, it was also the religion bubble where we had empty sanctuaries, and it was not the same. It was, and LeBron said, you know, I'm not playing without fans. And I think any spiritual leader says, you know, I'm not speaking without congregants. Like, it's about the people, the reactions, the getting people to see a higher purpose than they're actually, you know, than they come in for. And also, I've spoken about this a lot over the last couple of years on this podcast about the stadium as sanctuary and the sanctuary as refuge. We really feel that as a Big East guy growing up. Madison Square Garden for those 5 days every March was truly a sanctuary that I saw my people, that I felt a sense of sanctity. I was actually there for the 6 overtime game. It was a sacred moment, for sure.
You know, and I think that connection is so powerful. And, you know, I think we were talking offline about working with a smaller team, like a college tennis team. Like, you know, my wife and I work with the UNC team, and they're very good at what they do. And when they brought us in and trying to win that national title, one of the things that's really interesting is, you know, in a lot of these sports, they're individual athletes. So, you know, golf, tennis, gymnastics, wrestling, you know, track, cross country, but they're also team sports. And I think I've always enjoyed that, because how can you get a bunch of highly talented individuals to perform at their best while being connected and on their own? So I have this concept. This comes from my family therapy background, really, but healthy functioning families are about our ability to be separate yet connected.
I love that.
Many people have figured out how to be separate, but not so connected. And many families have figured out how to be connected, but not so separate. And often separateness is seen as threatening.
Right.
And, you know, I work with a lot of family business, and my early research was on Jewish family business and the stresses and dynamics of those businesses in the attempts to differentiate, be oneself in a close, culturally close, emotionally close, work-related family business is a real challenge for anybody. It's the same in these sports. If we can figure out how to be separate yet connected, we can create something that's bigger than ourselves. You talk about faith in sports, religion in sports. That connection is what I relate to religion in terms of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, actually, one of my favorite basketball teams of all time and college team was 1996 when Syracuse made the Final Four against Pitino's. You had 7 NBA players in the Kentucky team. But these guys in Syracuse, only I know the starting 5, John Wallace, Otis Hill, Todd Bergen, all these guys. But they were, I don't want to say nobodies, but they were not Carmelo Anthony when we won the title. But they got to that game because, and I loved Coach Boeheim's 2-3 zone, because it was that I think is the definition of separate but connected.
Yes.
Everybody has to move, but everybody's moving as one organism separately but together. And
That's
I love watching defenses that way, because it's not
Yes.
one-on-one. It's moving as a full organism.
Well, and most people don't get this, but even in baseball, every player should be involved with every play. So even if I'm in the outfield and there's a play at first base, the runner hits a ground ball, second base throws it to first, you've got your center fielder moving in to back up the second baseman. You've got your left fielder or your right fielder coming in to back up the throw. Your catcher's moving down the line. Everybody's moving. The pitcher. So it's a system. And that kind of system and connection, we focus on the individual, but it's much bigger than that. Yes. And when I look at organizational problems, when I'm called into, whether it's, senior executive teams or big organizations or teams or whatever it is in business or in sports, and there's usually a problem, I automatically go to, okay, well, here's the problem, but what is it about this behavior and about this system that has allowed this to exist and continue? So I'm always expanding it to the bigger picture, because it's not just replacing this guy and replacing that person or replacing her, or, we can do that all day long and we may not get anywhere. Maybe we get lucky, but let's take a look at organizationally, as a family, as a system, how are we getting in our own way? And if we're not willing to look at that, then I can't help them. I'm good at what I do, but if you're not willing to look at that, there's really nothing I can do. It's like a coach where the player doesn't really want to look at themselves or work harder to get better.
Right.
It's sad, they're talented, but what can you do?
And so 2 last questions. I'll save the best for last with the faith, but the second to last is about success. And once you hit the peak, right? I mean, everybody's talking about LeBron. Do you retire? I just saw a picture online today that, like, there's somebody at 41 should not be able to jump like that. But what happens at 42, 43? When an athlete is done with their success of peak, how do you sort of come down from that mountain gently to make sure that, unfortunately, we've seen so many crash when they don't have not necessarily the success, but the platform, the publicity, to just sort of go back to private individual life?
Yeah. So there's a number of issues with your question. One is that crash is real. It can happen. And so what we want to do is maybe be a little bit more proactive and help them learn more about who they are as a person versus who they are as a player. So you're not just a ball player, you're a person, and you want to continue to nourish that person, learn about that person, grow that person, so that you're not dependent on something that's not going to last forever. And when we're really good at what we do, there's a lot of good things that come with that success, but it's easy for our identity and our self-concept to become defined by that. And so we want to work, and often it's psychological work. It's psychotherapy to help people learn about themselves and not having to wait for a crisis to get their attention that, oh my gosh, I better do this. Sometimes people dealing with injury, maybe the first injury they've ever had, or career-threatening injury, or maybe it ends their career and they're lost. We want to prepare people on the front end and continue to do that so that they know they may miss it. It may be difficult, but they're still okay. And so that's the other thing. That's one thing. Another thing you'll see in sports, and I work with many of my clients are coaches. There are certain transitions that allow people to go from one stage of life to the other. In Why Good Coaches Quit, I talk about going into the broadcasting business is one of those transitions.
Absolutely.
Allows us to move from here to there, where we're still involved with the sports. I have many players that are coming back a few years after playing, want to get into broadcasting. And of course, we didn't have as many options as we do now, but with every regional sports network, with every online network. I mean, there's many opportunities to get involved at different levels. And if you want to create a new career for yourself, you have the opportunity to do that. And you can use your platforms and you can use your resources. And so there's a lot of different things that people do, but we really ideally want to be proactive in helping them in that transition. And that starts from day one. When I'm doing interviews for drafts or talent assessments, helping teams with a draft.
Very interesting.
Looking at, like, who should we draft? And, I remember I was with an NHL team that hired me to help them do that. And, they have all these scouts and they have a dozen people in their scouting department. And all they do is look at these
numbers.
Guys from all over the world and the numbers. And, but I'm looking for something different. I'm looking for emotional intelligence. I'm looking for how they deal with adversity. What happens when things don't work? It's easy to take the puck end to end and have great skating skills. It's easy to see that. But I'm interested in what happens when you lose the puck. What does that player do? Do they go rush after, try and make a stupid penalty, take a stupid penalty? Do they give up on their play? Do they get right back in? Things like that are much better predictors of success. But I will ask these young 18-year-olds who are the best 125 players in the world, what would you do if you didn't play hockey?
Nice. Because
I want to know. And, some of them have never thought about it. Others, it's like, they'll give you an answer. Like one guy says to me, he goes, "Oh, I want to go to law school." And I'm going, "Oh, wow, that's great. You want to be a lawyer?" He goes, "No, I want to go into business." But I thought a law degree would be really good. And I think, wow, this is pretty good kid. And then I said, so let's just play a scenario here. Let's say you're going into business and I'm your banker and you're asking me for a loan. One of the things I'm going to ask you is, have you ever failed at anything before? And I said, do you know why I'd ask you? And he goes, well, yeah, because if I say I failed, you wouldn't give me the loan. I said, no, just the opposite. I want to know that you can fail and get back up on your feet and still be okay. That's what I'm looking for. And then he got it. But those are the things that we want to get under the surface to really be able to predict success, if you will, or because they're really the more determinants of success beyond talent. And they're more important, quite honestly, like your Syracuse team.
That is fascinating look behind the drafts, because you always hear about, the teams interviewed these people, but I didn't realize it's people like you that have the, what are you looking for? Absolutely. And so the last question, the most famous question here on Rabbi on the Sidelines, intersection of sports and faith. Is there faith in sports? And we let you define the word faith the way however you would like to. Is there faith in the world of sports?
Yeah, I certainly believe that there's faith. I hope so. And when there isn't, it worries me. The faith is about trust and vision and where we're headed and being part of something and connection. And that connection is really, really powerful. And I talked about with the USC team and those kids learning how to be connected to one another as individuals and how they came up with something that they could practice being connected. What happens, Rabbi, and you know this as well, when we encounter adversity, when terrible things happen to us, or maybe even not so terrible things happen to us, we tend to feel we hurt and we tend to withdraw, and we can have a tendency to become somewhat isolated. Well, that happens a lot in sports. And being part of something, knowing that I'm connected to someone else and there's a teammate there who I'm connected to and who's connected to me, that even if things aren't going well and I may be losing these points or I may be making mistakes or our team is behind, I know that I'm not there alone. So I have a chance to create something that's beyond me, bigger than I can do on my own. So I think faith is ultra important. And to me, it's communicated in the relationships that we have between people and what we can do with those connections. That's what's exciting.
Wow. Well, I know I needed this talk to me on the world that sometimes feels like it's crumbling around us, to know that we have each other, and sports is one of those ways in which we are brought together. Sports, faith, whatever it is, but it's the connection, and I love that idea of separateness and connectedness together. And
Yeah.
also, I think what we learned most is let's get out of our own way, not out of each other's way, but out of our own way. Dr. Rick Aberman, sports psychologist, author of Why Good Coaches Quit, just an amazing, amazing scholar for house staff here on Rabbi on the Sidelines. I hope on your travels to Los Angeles, when you work with athletes and coaches, you are part of our Sinai Temple family, and we look forward to speaking with you soon. Rick, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Rabbi. My pleasure, and I will be in touch.
Thank you.